Ann Coulter tells Vivek Ramaswamy she would never vote for him because you're Indian. Come on, dude. There's so many reasons not to vote for this fucking loser. He praised Ann Coulter for having the guts to make racist remarks directly to his face on his podcast. The N-word nationalism was the title of the podcast she appeared on. Oh, God. She replied that he is bright and articulate and notes that she wouldn't be allowed to say that to him if he was an American black. Dude, she's giving me all kinds of yikesy vibes with this. Also, yeah, the reason you don't say that is because that then it carries with it the prerequisite that black people on average aren't bright and articulate. She goes on to say that even though she agreed with him more than most other GOP primary candidates, she would not have voted for him to be president because he's Indian. What's the quote? She said, I agree with many things you said during your campaign, but I still would not have voted for you because you're Indian. Really? There's not even anything more to it. She then claimed that the core national identity in the United States is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So America's secular, so being Protestant has nothing to do with anything. White and Anglo-Saxon are two separate things. Anglo-Saxon refers to a specific ethnicity that doesn't exist anymore. White people were not even considered Anglo-Saxon. America, when it was originally created, was made for Anglo-Saxons, but Germans who were white were not allowed in the country because their swarmy whiteness wouldn't be able to understand the concept of American freedom. That's what Ben Franklin said. Saying this country's for white people ignores the fact that originally this country was not actually for white people the way that we recognize white people nowadays. Oh wait, look, he tweeted it. Ann Coulter told me flat out to my face that she couldn't vote for me because you're an Indian, even though she agreed with me more than other candidates. I disagree with her, but respect she had the guts to speak her mind. It was a riveting hour. Bruh. That's literally like as the black man is like clinging on for dear life as he's dying because he's being lynched. He's like, you know what? I at least have to admire his rope tying abilities. He's really able to tie a nice tight knot. Wow, dude. This guy paid attention in Boy Scouts. Last words. Like, I disagree with her, but respect she had the guts to speak her mind. This is like, so if your drunk uncle was like, black people ought to be a currency again, would that then just be like, well, I don't agree with you, but you know what? I respect you for speaking your mind, pal. Like, there's a lot of stupid things people have on their mind. Don't just by default respect it because they said what's on their mind. This place smells like shit. Hey, he said what's on his mind. Like, it's just...
And have interacted with on social media, but for the first time, we're having a at least live form conversation in the offline sense of it. It's Ann Coulter. So, Ann, thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Thanks for having me. That was a fantastic opening monologue. I, too, am a fan of yours. So I'm going to make a point of disagreeing with you so that it will be fun. You are so bright and articulate, and I guess I can call you articulate since you're not an American black. Can't say that about them. That's derogatory.
There's a little more to that than just that's derogatory. I can't say that about them. I can never talk about the blacks. It's like so yikesy sounding.
And that was a great opening segment. Lots of things to talk about there. Oh, and I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. We'll get back to that.
Could we please get back to that, Ann Coulter? Holy shit, dude. Literally just meth, not even once. That's the whole thing I'm thinking. As soon as her face popped in here on the screen, that's the only thing I could think.
Believe that of the total set of people who are deranged in their anti-American conviction for their ideology being guided.
By the way, saying you wouldn't vote for somebody who's an American-born citizen here because of their ethnicity is literally anti-American.
You're probably against the existence of dual citizenship as a concept. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yes. You and I share that in common.
Outrageous.
It's incoherent. It's not just outrageous. It's incoherent. It's oxymoronic. How could you possibly have a loyalty to two different nations where the essence of citizenship is which nation?
your first issue is you're assuming you need to have loyalty to a specific nation. Maybe you could just have like general respect to your fellow civilians, general society. What is this weird, like, you cannot serve two masters at once? Yeah, nobody should be fucking being loyal to their country like that. That's fucking creepy.
To whom you had your undivided loyalty. That's what the essence of citizenship is all about. So you and I agree on so much there. But where I wouldn't say lose you, but I may fail to fully understand you, is on that axis of citizenship, what does ethnicity have to do with the matter? And I think
I like how he's like, I don't really know if I fully disagree with you that I'm like a scumfuck Indian, smelly shit in the streets piece of garbage who should never be president, but like, I feel like maybe I want to give you some mild pushback on that. Like, he's playing it so safe just because it's Ann Coulter, and it's really cringe.
you would be well served, and maybe this could be a great platform for you to do it, to make the case for why that, what you put it, WASP basis for the American identity, how is that relevant against a backdrop of which you got the WASP seventh generation descendant of some rich guy on the Upper East Side in Brooklyn that pretends to hate this country because it's the cool thing to do, versus somebody who came here as the kid of immigrants but pledges loyalty to this country? If loyalty was the axis for citizenship, aren't you actually committing a bit of a sin, reverting back to a conception of citizenship that has nothing to do with loyalty in the first place?
Oh. He is actually a huge piece of shit, by the way. And again, there are like a ton of reasons not to vote for him that have nothing to do with his ethnicity. But that right there was a pretty good question.
Well, I will say many of those seventh generations WASP I definitely hate. I know we have a lot of really, really bad ones, but like I said, anyone can adopt this. I guess what I just said, if any of your children marry a DAR, I would definitely vote for them for president. It's not so much, it's more, president is different. You have to be natural born, as you know, which, by the way, Ted Cruz is not, basically because of what you were just describing. Where is the loyalty? So ambassadors' children.
Why are they assuming that you're loyal to the country you're born in? There are immigrants that literally are so not loyal to their country and so loyal to America that they risk everything to come here. Why do you just assume, like, oh, well, when you were first born, you see, you were in Canada, so your DNA now has a natural intrinsic loyalty. There's actually more evidence that some of the immigrants who come here have more loyalty to this country than some of the people just born here, like what Vivek Ramaswamy said.
But the essence of American identity, I think there's a part of you that believes, I think you basically said so, that part of that identity is tied to a certain Anglo-Saxon heritage of this country, and that you're more American if you vested into that over the course of generations that are descended from that, rather than somebody who...
So what this does is, and it's intentional, what it intentionally does is exclude people from being participants of this country. It excludes people from being able to consider themselves true Americans. She says this Anglo-Saxon cringe. Who here is Anglo-Saxon? I'm not. I'm Italian. Where's Anglo-Saxon? It's not even a thing anymore. This whimsical, magical thing that doesn't even exist is what America's really meant for. I guarantee you she's not Anglo-Saxon.
Who came here with a civic commitment to the country, went through the naturalization process, and then their kids may, in some real sense of the word, and the reason I respect you is that you actually have the, so to speak, the stones to be able to say it, is that you think that there's a difference in the status of the Americanness of that person. And that's where I think I disagree with you, but I want to give you the opportunity to air the case for that strand of national identity that I think...
So I think I disagree with you, but why don't you just share your thoughts with the room? He's so spineless. And again, how the fuck does ethnicity have anything to do with how much you respect or love or invest in this country? It has nothing to do with it. In fact, immigrants start businesses at higher rates than native-born American citizens.
The reason I mentioned the natural-born citizen is I'm only talking about President of the United States. So obviously the framers thought there was something different about being president, the one man who holds one entire branch of government.
The founders also thought there was a difference, again, between Anglo-Saxon people and you, Ann Coulter, and any other white person that we would consider white nowadays. They also saw a big distinction and a big difference between those people. Fuck the founding fathers. No, don't. You'll get syphilis.
It doesn't just say anything about who could be a Supreme Court justice, and they have a little more power than the president, by the way, or Secretary of State, or governor, or obviously senator, or any other position, but president, and I guess by extension, vice president. That is something that the framers did think was so important that you had this deep generation-wide loyalty. And why would they think that?
Because they were racist? Why would they think that? The same people that were okay with enslaving black people didn't see black people as humans. Gee, why would they think this country was only for white people? Why would they think the president should only be a white guy? Like, it's so pathetic. Because they were racist, like you, dumb fuck.
Well, as many said at the time, freedom is a wonderful thing, but it's a very hard thing to learn. And one of the things, and I cite these polls in my book, Adios America, it's striking and depressing that lots of our very best immigrants just do not understand the Second Amendment. They do not get the First Amendment, and you take polls of them. Should you have a right to bear arms? Should hate speech be banned? And it's noticeable that large percentages of immigrants and children of immigrants really don't get that. And I think,
okay, what percentage of American-born white people are against guns? Hispanic Republicans are less likely than non-Hispanic Republicans to prioritize protection of gun rights. So keep in mind, she's taking this from the most ridiculous, wishy-washy way imaginable. She's like, well, brown people vote a way that I don't like, so the brown people should go bye-bye. Rather than wondering, why do these types of policies appeal to these types of people? Oh, this is so interesting. Immigrants are less likely to own a gun, and they're less likely to be ultra supportive of the Second Amendment and gun rights and everything. This can be used to justify their relationship with low crime rates. So the conservatives constantly say, the immigrants need to get out of here because they commit crime. Not true. Actually, immigrants commit less crime. And part of the reason why is because of their opinion and their view on average when it comes to owning guns. But she's simultaneously complaining that they don't own guns? Like, there's no way to win for this person. Clearly, she just doesn't like brown people, and she's done too much meth.
That is the point of having natural-born citizen only for president, that this is a really delicate thing we have, this freedom to bear arms and there being no such thing as hate speech. And it's just an additional little safeguard.
Here's my question for you on that is, because the left is actually very good at using what I call proxy logic. I reject proxy logic, but the left is actually very good at this. They'll say we need diversity in a corporate institution. So we're going to select for diversity of thought, not by screening candidates for the diversity of their thoughts, but by screening them for the diversity of their skin color, which is a really curious thing. If you care about diversity of thought in a boardroom, why do you care about diversity of shades of melanin or the diversity of your X or Y chromosomes? You could have a room full of people that look really similar to one another and think very differently, or a room full of people that look really different and think the same.
Look, guys, women are more likely than men to favor stricter gun laws in the U.S. It's time to deport all women.
Which is much of what you get in corporate America today. So that's what I call reasoning by proxy, where one of the things I've often said to the left is if you want to select for diversity of thought, screen candidates for the diversity of their thoughts. If you want to select for diversity of experience, screen candidates for the diversity of their experiences.
Screen candidates for the diversity of thought? So you're going to be like, what? So you're going to be like policing people's thoughts? You're going to be the thought police? No, seriously though, like how the fuck would you screen people for diversity of thoughts?
Reasoning by proxy, where one of the things I've often said to the left is if you want to select for diversity of thought, screen candidates for the diversity of their thoughts. If you want to select for diversity of experience, screen candidates for the diversity of their experiences. That might be a better way of achieving your stated goal than to use the logic of proxy. So again, the constitutional questions to aside, I think we're talking about a cultural matter relating to national identity. My question for you is, I worry that you may, I say this respectfully, maybe making some of the same category error that our friends on the left make to say that, yes, it is shameful that immigrants and kids of immigrants often have no idea what the heck the Bill of Rights is actually about, that the Second Amendment exists not to protect some guy who wants to go sport hunting, but it's the one amendment that puts the teeth in all of the other ones. That
Right.
The First Amendment, the right to...
I'm sorry, but you're a fucking idiot if this is like your biggest concern with immigrants. Well, yeah, I mean, generally they pay more into social services than they take out. They commit less crime. They start businesses. They're good for the economy. They're good for the entire country. But do they really know what the Bill of Rights is? Do they even know how to read it, or do I have to put it in Spanish? Like, do they...
Free speech means nothing if hate speech is carved as a category, because the definition of free speech is the right to express any opinion, no matter how heinous it is.
Wait, what?
The definition of free speech is the right to express any opinion, no matter how heinous it is. And
Okay, fine. You don't have a right to express that heinous opinion anywhere you want, and you don't have the freedom from consequences that might come from expressing this heinous opinion.
these are basic concepts that many immigrants, first-generation Americans, and for that matter, I can say it from having gone to school with many of the WASP varieties that populate places like Harvard too, where I've gone, goes for any sixth or seventh generation American too. It's shameful. The absence of knowledge, a black hole of understanding of the history of our country. And I guess my question for you is, why solve for that?
So here's my question. How come immigrants are more accepting and generally contribute more to the overall economy, thus benefiting the well-being of every American, even when they don't understand the history of America or some dumb shit? But then these chuckle fucks who apparently do understand the history of America are literally betraying the fact that they don't understand the history of America at all, or they would never be saying stupid shit like this white Anglo-Saxon thing.
What I would argue is a pretty poor proxy, whether or not you're talking about a safeguard. If there could be a safeguard to ensure that you have leaders in this country or citizens of this country that have a better understanding of that, I would love that safeguard. I personally believe that every high school senior should have to be able to pass a basic civics test, the one we ask immigrants to pass, before becoming a voting citizen of this country. Before you cast that ballot in a ballot box, you better darn know what branch of government the president leads. And yet, you actually have more people who would fail the test that naturalized citizens are likely to pass who aren't even naturalized citizens. Why not solve for the actual target that you and I both care about, which is loyalty and an understanding of what you're actually pledging loyalty to, rather than using what I would argue is...
You need to deal with the actual problem that you have then, which is wanting people to be fucking loyal to a nation. Okay, that's gay and cringe. You can be loyal to the people in your nation. You can be loyal to your fellow citizens, your neighbors, but loyal to the nation? What does that even look like? What does that mean? And why? The point of America is that it can be challenged, even from within. This is part of the blessing that we have when it comes to our freedom of speech. We can be critical of America as American citizens. We can say, hey, I'm glad that America has freedoms, but also America needs to improve here. Being loyal to America is just basically being a sheep for your fucking country.
A left-like false proxy target that you use to solve for the same thing.
First of all, what you just said, what you started with there, if liberals, you say you love diversity so much, but it's diversity of ethnicity and not diversity of thought. If what you want is diversity, you need to have...
You're assuming diversity of ethnicity and not diversity of experience. As long as there are racist meth heads like Anne who treat immigrants different, then you're going to, on average, have more immigrants that have different experiences.
to have diversity. You should be focusing on diversity of thought. That was the essay I wrote for my law school application essay, and my mentor.
Oh, well, I bet then that she didn't know this. It's true that you need diversity of thought, but did you know, Annie, that if you were to take a bunch of, say, white men and stick them into a room together where they need to solve a problem, just seeing somebody that looks similar to you, even if you have different thoughts and opinions, you perceive that person as thinking more similarly to you, thus stifling innovation.
At Cornell read it and just threw it over his shoulder and said, fine, take the flamboyant route. So anyway, that's what I argued, lo, these many years ago. Yes, couldn't agree with you more. And no, of course, they don't care about diversity. Number two, I mean, it isn't really true that the seventh generation WASPs are voting worse than the immigrants. One of the problems with the immigrants we've been taking in, actually probably any immigrant, but definitely 90% of legal immigrants come from the third world. They're used to authoritarian governments. They block votes. And every 4 years, I have to hear about how, no, I think we're going to take the Hispanic.
Don't immigrants assimilate at really high rates? I like how she's just making stuff up. But then again, like, this is what happens when your brain is on meth. You start getting really paranoid, making up all sorts of stories, you know? The immigrants. Like, that's literally just what she's doing right now.
Vote this year. I think we're going to get the Asian vote. No, you're not Republicans. Every election is decided by slight movements of the white vote. Now, the fact that the white vote is that close, yeah, okay, I hate 50% of them, but they're the ones who change their mind and look at the different candidates. It's much more easy to boss around people who have come from an authoritarian culture. And yes, take your point that this is, at least for this one position, president, you are looking at something other than.
Even if she was right, why is she assuming that this authoritarian culture is intrinsic or even connected to race or ethnicity? Like, for example, when America was started by the bold Christian white men, who are they fleeing from? I think that they were running away from authoritarianism, right? And I'm trying to remember, who was being authoritarian back then? That's right, it was other white people. Those were white people fighting with white people about different values and ideas. You're also talking about diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, and you're just assuming that if somebody comes from a third world, if someone escapes the third world and is fleeing the third world, that they must just all be the same? They must all just think the same? You're the one who's not assuming that maybe there's a diversity of thought amongst immigrants.
And I'd also be more comfortable if you're third generation and have some English or British blood in you.
British blood in you? But the British were also oppressing people and were trying to be authoritarian. If you have British blood in you, then you're more likely to have the authoritarian blood in you, right? Because aren't those the motherfuckers we had to fight for our freedom? Why do you hope that we have traitorous blood in us? You freak.
Effective way of achieving the same goal. My question on the immigration point, though, is how do your views change on that legal immigration paradigm if we actually did a better job of selecting for who actually gets to come to this country?
It would be something totally, yes, it would be something totally, totally different. I want to go back to pre-Teddy Kennedy's 1965 Act rules, where, as I've said many times, so sorry if I'm boring you at this point.
You're boring me because you're bitching out again about the 1965 Immigration Act that is so over and done with. And mind you, that Immigration Act, two things actually. First and foremost, when it passed, the majority of Congress and the majority of American citizens were on board with it. That was a democratic thing that took place. That's what the people wanted. So I don't know why you're against that. That's a little yikesy. The second thing is, part of what that Immigration Act did is it allowed for chain immigration. And the reason, or the thought process behind that, as funny as this was because they had a lot of immigrants at the time coming from Canada and other white areas, they thought, hey, if we have some white immigrants here, we should make it so that when they have kids, their kids are automatically going to be citizens here so that we'll have more white people in the country. But what happened, of course, was we saw this rule apply to people that were not just white. But at the end of the day, the majority of Americans in 1960s said that they would be okay with determining immigration based on somebody's skills, based on their work ability, not based on their race. That's what people wanted. And now Ann Coulter, dictator fascist over here, meth head fascist, wants to just ignore what the people said, I guess.
1965 immigrants were so much better than we are. We ought to be bringing in people. I mean, immigration is just a government policy like any other taxes or, import.
We try to bring in like really high-end skilled immigrants in the tech field, and the conservatives literally go into diabetic comas about that.
Import fees. It's just a government policy. It ought to be used to help the people already here. So I keep saying we ought to be getting our average up. Let's bring in people better than us. And that's what it actually kicked in around 1970. So pre-1970 immigrants were better educated, made more money, bought more.
Okay, also doesn't make sense because the vast majority of immigrants, both illegal and legal, tend to do jobs that American citizens don't want to do themselves. You can look at Pew Research polling data that shows the vast majority of Americans say, yeah, immigrants are filling jobs that I don't really want to do. So this notion that like we should be bringing in only the most skilled, why? The not most skilled also are serving a significant benefit to this country, to the overall economy.
More houses. Oh my gosh, did that change after Teddy Kennedy's Immigration Act? Now 90% of, as Trump says, legal immigrants are from the third world. There isn't that much
That wasn't funny. The whole squad is not laughing.
difference between legal and illegal in terms of the cultures they're coming from. And why is that? Because at the same time, the 1965 immigration passed, we also got LBJ's Great Society programs. So if you came here basically at any
things like welfare that have been very significant in pulling people out of poverty. Yeah, based. What?
point from, 1632 up until 1965, if you couldn't make it, you went home or you starved to death.
Yeah, why can't we go back to the good old days, man? Take me back. Back when in the good old days, the 1700s. As long as you didn't get the fucking bubonic plague, you were pretty much good. Like, what the fuck is she on about right now?
There was no warm bath of welfare benefits that you would be sunk into. And
good thing they're not sinking into that. In fact, immigrants, illegal and legal, actually no, explicitly illegal immigrants pay more into social services than they take out. But it's cute that you think otherwise. Just stop doing math. You'll start thinking clearly, I promise.
And most people don't know this, but about 30% of the prized Ellis Island immigrants went home. 60% of Southern Italian immigrants went home. So that's how, without having any laws or having to pick this one or that one, we just naturally got the best the world had to offer. We were skimming the cream. And I think when most people like Trump talk about legal...
This doesn't even make sense. Like half the conservatives are constantly whining about birth rates going down in America. First of all, I don't really know if that's true about as far as in America. But even if they were, the only reason that would really be a problem is if it affected the economy. And immigrants are keeping that afloat.
But really what they mean is pre-1970, post-1970. Now, if we're not going to get rid of the welfare state, that is clearly the best way to do it. To just, yeah, sure, anybody can come. If you can't make it, go home or you're going to die. And no one will help you. But we can't get...
Why does she just keep going and making it worse and worse and worse? Before this stupid fucking policy came along, then it was like, that's it, okay? You're done. You're on your own. You're gonna die in the cold, burning, in pain, screaming and begging for release, and nobody's gonna help you. And I swear it's gonna hurt. Like, she just keeps on going at it. Like, just stop. You're making it sound worse. Okay, well, Ann Coulter is here to do the most convincing anti-meth advertisement I think I have ever seen in my life. Thank you, Ann Coulter, for the thrilling and very racist roller coaster.